So it's been a proverbial age, but I finally pulled my finger out and gone and done another instalment in this series. As I write this, I'm not sure how far through I will get with this, but who knows, this Super Saloon might actually be complete by the end of this video, but for now, let's crack on. Since the last video, I've run a few tests to see how the coach runs, and well, it wasn't exactly good news. If the coach went round a corner that was any tighter than a dead straight, the bogies would lock up and the coach would bounce off the rails. So looking into it, I initially thought that it was down to how I mounted the couplings. This is an NEM socket mount with a KD fitted, which when examined would impede the movement of the bogie by catching on the wheels. So I removed that. But I still had an issue, so I filed the top of the bogies down a bit and thought that might be catching on the sole bar. Again, still had the problem. I filed the sole bar itself down as there were a few lumps and bumps of solder here and there, but I still had a problem. Now what I did think was that the coach wasn't lifted high enough up off the bogies, so I bought a second coach kit just to try something out. This was also used as a test bed for painting. And what I did was these bits that the coach actually ride on, I soldered these straight on top of the bogies, rather than through the holes as the instructions state. And hey presto, there were no problems with this coach, which is good to know for the future, but not great for the Super Saloon as I don't think I'll be able to remove the current bits from the bogie. So for now, I'll just have to settle for putting a packing piece made from scrap brass onto the chassis, and then I'll have to figure out what I'm doing with the coupling later on. Something else I learned from making the second coach was to make the roof separate to the body, as it will make painting a whole lot easier. One last little detail modification I'm making is on the bogies. The bar that goes between the two axle boxes has been very susceptible to damage, and trying to get it back straight has proven impossible. So I just decided to cut it off and glue in a piece of brass rod in its place, and it looks heaps better. So onto the actual build of new bits then. I'm going to begin with the interior. The supplied drawing that came with this is pretty much to scale, so that makes marking everything out a little bit easier. I also used pictures from the South Devon Railway's website of the interior of one of their Super Saloons to get a feel for what I was modelling. Something which I thought was pretty genius is this thin strip. It's the width of the walkway through the middle, so you can use that to stem everything else off, like where the seats and tables belong, and for the most part it goes 7mm from one edge and 15 from the other. So after measuring that and marking, this strip was glued in place. After then, I marked off where the tables and chairs would go, and started making up the tables, which simply fold together and are soldered to hold it together. The chairs are going to be an approximation, as this coach has wing-back chairs that aren't bolted down in any way, so can be positioned as you please. I did look into some 3D printed chairs but couldn't be certain that they'd fit, and they would also have been quite expensive to get the 28 required. Also, these are on the inside of the coach, so it won't be hugely problematic them being partly incorrect. To make the seats, I took the plastic moulding provided, cut this little bit off the top, and also cut the bottom bit to make them look as close as possible to the pictures as I could. I then measured and marked the back with 6mm markings, which is where I then cut them with a hacksaw. These then were cleaned up, and I then glued some of the etched ends onto them. Before I stick all these chairs and tables in place, I made up the interior bulkheads with the supplied plastic card. I followed the diagram and also the pictures again to get a feel for where they went. And once they were in, the bits that would abut up to the coach sides and roof were trimmed a bit so it would actually fit. Once all these were glued in place, it was time to glue the chairs and tables in place, which was just a case of super glue. Right, now we're nearly ready for painting, but first, the super detailing kit from Comet, which I'm mostly going to be using for the gangway suspenders. I did think about omitting this, but after seeing how good it can look, I decided it'd be foolish not to fit them. They're pretty simple to install, as were all the other details. However, I would advise against doing the end details in the order implied by the instructions, as if you do the suspenders and then the emergency brake gear, it's very difficult to get the wire to fit, as you're feeding it through very small gaps, and it's incredibly frustrating. Naughty words were uttered during that. So do the emergency brake gear first and then do the suspenders. And saying that, the hinges can be done at any time, as they're very easy to install with a Dremel and a 0.5mm drill bit. The handrails and door handles were also drilled for but not installed, as they'll cause issues with masking if installed now, so I'll do those later. And speaking of which, it is now time to paint. Firstly, the whole model gets cleaned with Cif in the bathroom sink. Then when that's dry, I then wipe it over with some white spirit. This just removes all grease or anything that could impede the paint application. And then sprayed with some just simple primer from Halfords. And throughout all of this, I will be wearing gloves, so not to get any more finger grease or other contaminants onto the paint. And now it's time for colour. The chassis and bogies got 2 coats of satin black, again from Halfords. The interior also got attacked, using some photos, again from the South Devon Railway's website, just for reference to get an idea of the colours. Then the body shell got some coats of GWR stock cream, and then this is where it all goes downhill for me. I had really tried to get this model complete for this video. However, I have been having issues with my airbrush. So it means I'll only get so far with the stage, which is so frustrating. But it does mean that there will be a part 4 for the finishing touches and for the paint to be completed. So there's something for you all to look forward to. I got so close, but alas. There isn't too much more to do, so part 4 will be fairly short, but I might just have some videos of it running, because I have a railway that runs now. So I'm really sorry that it's not done. This has been one of the few occasions where I had a timescale to get the video done, and it's significantly bitten me in the butt a little bit here. So until next time, like and subscribe, and that will will the Super Saloon to be finished.